Hi everyone, welcome to the second to last video of my Knitmas series. I guess it's not really Knitmas anymore since Christmas is over. So welcome to my knit years content. This will be a Q&A, which I've never done before, but last week I asked if you had any questions for me. And I wasn't sure, to be honest, if I was going to get any questions. And so I thought maybe I just wouldn't film it if I didn't get any questions. But you did ask some really good ones. So we're going to go through those. And while I answer them, I'm going to be working on one of my gift knits that I shamefully did not get done in time for Christmas. Some socks that I'm knitting for my boyfriend. First up is, how long did it take for you to learn your favorite color combos to knit with? A very long time, and I'm definitely still learning and figuring that out 100%. I've knit so many sweaters and just so much stuff that I didn't end up loving because my colors weren't great, and I spent a long time, like years of my knitting journey, knitting gray because I just didn't know what I really liked, and I wanted to knit stuff that I would wear, and so gray and black and beige seemed like the best, most wearable options. So I definitely have a lot of sweaters knit in those colors, and they're not bad colors, but they never really felt like me. So not only has it taken me years to figure out like what solid colors I like, it's taken me even longer to figure out color combos that I prefer. And I think it's been a combination of looking at what other people are doing, getting inspiration from them, seeing color combos either in knitwear or just out in the world that I realize I like, and then following through with that, as well as looking a little bit deeper into color theory. I'm not one to speak on that because I just don't know much, to be honest, but I do like to look at the color wheel and figure out what colors like theoretically, objectively look good together, and then seeing if I like that. The colors that I like to knit with definitely correlate with the colors I like to wear. So as I figured out my taste in fashion and what I want my wardrobe to be, it's been easier to figure out what color yarn to buy. But yeah, I mean, as far as how long it's taken me, like since I've been knitting, which is over 18 years at this point, and I definitely still feel like I'm figuring it out. Okay, next there are 3 questions from the same person. The first one is, what's your favorite project you ever made, and what would you never make again? Favorite project is definitely the first successful sweater that I knit, which is The Exeter by Michelle Wong. I don't know what compelled me to knit this sweater as my first one. I mean, I had started a couple of sweaters before this that I didn't successfully make. Like, I never finished them because they were too hard for me. So I thought, why not knit this intricately cabled long cardigan? Bottom up, seamed. I don't know what I was thinking, but I have to say that's my favorite because I learned so much from that project, and I was very proud of myself when I was able to finish it. I think part of what was going on was I was a kid when I had first attempted sweaters, and so this was the first one where I was like an adult. I was in college, and I just really wanted to like be able to make something that I wanted and not be limited by my skills. So I guess I thought I would just attempt a really challenging project, and I was able to do it, so that definitely boosted my confidence. The most challenging part of this sweater was when I got to the step that said seam the pieces together, and I was like, how the fuck do I do that? I definitely expected it to like tell me how to do that. I think it did say to use mattress stitch, so I looked that up, and then eventually I found a tutorial on how to sew in a set-in sleeve. But without that tutorial, I was totally lost, and I did attempt to do that before looking up how to do it, and it did not go well. Once I finally found tutorials on everything, I was able to figure it all out. And that probably started me down a path of wanting to look up how things are like supposed to be done and how to actually achieve techniques instead of just like winging it. And even though I have a lot of sweaters that I really like that I've knit since then, those are the reasons why that one has to be my favorite project. As for what I would never make again, there are not too many patterns in this world that I would truly refuse to reknit. However, there is one, and that is Tuku Honey by Andrea Mallory. These socks sucked to knit. They look like they suck to knit. I don't know why. I thought I would have a good time making them. They are almost entirely purled, and the section that's not purled is garter stitch in the round and honeycomb cables. That doesn't sound fun. It doesn't look fun. I don't know why I wanted to make these. I just wanted the finished object. I'm totally a product knitter, and so I will put myself through torture to achieve what I ultimately want. But I do have some boundaries, and I will never make these again. If you could only choose one, would you choose colorwork, lace, or cables? Definitely cables. This probably goes back to the Exeter cardigan. I think that was my first time knitting cables, and I just love them. I love knitting them. I like that there's so many variations of cables, and sometimes knitting a cable doesn't necessarily look how you think a cable would look. Like, it can create a lot of different types of interesting fabrics. I've never been a huge lace knitter, and although I love color work, especially the way it looks, it's not my favorite to knit. I prefer just knitting with a single color. Do you have a someday when I'm good enough project? And if so, what is it? I'm gonna move you down a little bit so you can see my knitting a little bit better. I definitely do have one. And now that I got a certain Christmas gift that I got this year, I can actually put it into practice and build the skills to make it. I got a knitting machine this year, and I'm so stoked about it. I'm waiting on a couple parts to come in before I can really start using it and learning it. But that has always been my someday project, is knitting a sweater on a machine. I will definitely still be hand knitting. Don't worry, I love hand knitting. But I've been really feeling the need to make some basic sweaters for my wardrobe, and I'm not in love with the idea of hand knitting a ton of stockinette sweaters. So this really was perfect timing for me. So that's my someday when I'm good enough project, is learning how to use the knitting machine and actually successfully making a sweater that I'm happy with. Okay, I've been a longtime viewer of your channel. Thank you. And I would like to know, what would your dream vacation be and where would you go? Ooh, this one's tough because I have never been on like a vacation. I've only ever taken trips. And a trip is a type of vacation, but do you get what I mean? Like, I've only ever been to places to explore and like be a tourist. I've never gone somewhere just to like relax. So I guess that popped into my head as like a dream vacation, is just like going to the beach, or yeah, probably the beach, and just like knitting the entire time and eating food. So I guess that's like my dream, but there are so many places that I would love to go visit that I don't know if I'll ever actually, make that sort of relaxing vacation happen. I would love to visit the UK, Scotland especially. Japan is definitely on our list of places we want to visit. I'd love to go to the Baltics. I would love to visit Vietnam. I think I'd really like Thailand. Portugal is also at the top of my list. I've never been to Hawaii. South America would be really cool to see. There are so many countries that I would love to visit, and I hope that I get to someday. Somebody asks, have you ever thought about getting into dyeing? I have actually dyed before, so probably that was about 6 years ago, I think. My answer would be yes. I'm not sure that I will return to it like as a hobby, but I like knowing that I have some of the resources and some of the knowledge to dye if there's like a specific thing that I want to try dyeing. It was really fun to try, and I could see myself doing it again, but I don't know that it'll become like a hobby for me. Tell us some knitting hot takes, your fave and least favorite popular patterns, etc. Okay, I don't think I've ever like talked about my knitting hot takes, and that's probably just because I don't have many, because I'm kind of boring, and like ultimately if you're doing something that makes you happy, like I'm not going to shit on it. But of course I do have some hot takes. So you asked about favorite and least favorite patterns. There are a couple patterns that did come to mind as like very popular patterns that I'm not really a fan of. I don't know why, I really can't explain this, but I don't like the grid gambit cowl. It's such a popular pattern, so clearly I'm in the minority here. And it's weird because I've knit the shift cowl and by Andrew Mowry, and it's a very similar kind of style, like it's that mosaic color work. For some reason I just don't like the grid gambit. So that's a least favorite. I also have a hard time liking my favorite things knitwear, which feels strange to say because those are such basic patterns that I'm almost like, what is there to dislike about it? But I don't know if it's something about like the style or the marketing or something. I'm just like not a huge fan of her patterns for some reason. I could see myself knitting one if there's something that I really like and want to make, but I'm definitely not drawn to her patterns. Also, just in general, I'm not really like a hood kind of person. I mean, I love a hoodie. I'm wearing one right now, but just like a hood on its own, I'm not a huge fan of. Also, like the Dickies, I don't really like. Anything that feels like it should be attached to a sweater, but it's not, I tend to dislike. Okay, another popular pattern I just have never been drawn to is the ranunculus. I know that there's like so many different ways to knit it and you can get different outcomes, you know, based on your gauge and your yarn and all of that. And there's like nothing wrong with the pattern. I just don't think that I really like it. I wouldn't say that this is an unpopular opinion, but I do tend to dislike the fit of Caitlin Hunter's patterns, especially her color work patterns. But I'm also not necessarily drawn to like her aesthetic anyway, so it doesn't like bother me. But honestly, a lot of the popular patterns I do like, even if I wouldn't knit them or if I'm not knitting them, like I see them and I'm like, yeah, that is a really nice pattern. I like a lot of petite knit patterns. I think that she does basics really well, and that's harder to do than people can give credit for sometimes. I also like that her patterns, or at least her newer ones, are size inclusive. Another popular pattern I think deserves the hype is the Step by Step sweater by Florence Miller. I've never personally knit it, but I've heard from a lot of people that it's a great first sweater, and the pattern is very clear, and she has like a full video tutorial on how to make that sweater, which is awesome. I also really like the Musselburgh hat. I've knit several of those, and that pattern tends to be on Ravelry's hot right now. I'm actually looking at a note on my phone that I started like probably 5 years ago of my knitting unpopular opinions. And what's so funny about it is like most of them aren't really true anymore. Like one of my unpopular takes is that I don't really have a yarn stash, and clearly that's changed. I like magic loop more than 16-inch circulars. That's still true. I usually don't mind re-knitting things. I feel like, I don't know if that's actually unpopular. I rarely knit gifts and I don't feel guilty about it. That's still true. One is that I don't mind making adjustments or modifications to patterns. Not that this is like a hot take, but I have seen some takes out there where people are upset that patterns aren't giving you like everything you need, or they don't give you enough options. And I disagree. I think what we're getting out of knitting patterns is a lot for what we're paying for them. And I also think that if you want to get a very specific product out of your knitting, then you should put the effort into figuring out how to do some of these things and modifying the pattern to exactly what you would like. Otherwise, you know, a pattern is a pattern and you're gonna get what the designer designed. So I think especially with like modifying the fit, I think it's great that a lot of modern patterns include bust darts. That's something that didn't really exist when I started knitting. But my hot take is that I just don't expect that. And I don't really think it's fair to expect all designers to start adding in those types of modifications. I think we as knitters should be comfortable adding those things in or making adjustments based on our personal bodies. That might actually be a hot take. I don't know. I just think we're expecting a lot out of designers, and knitting patterns are so cheap, especially compared to sewing patterns. Not that they're like a one-to-one comparison, but I don't know that we can keep expecting designers to put more and more effort into their patterns while the price of patterns doesn't change that much. However, I want to be clear, I'm not talking about size inclusivity, because anyone of any size should be able to knit any sweater that they like, and it should just be small adjustments to kind of account for like your specific body shape. Some more that I wrote down: knitting flat and seaming is better than knitting in the round because it's more sturdy. I think we have kind of exhausted this conversation in the knitting world at this point. I don't know that I would say to this day that it's better than knitting in the round. Clearly I did believe that at one point. I think they each serve a purpose depending on what you want to achieve. Crafting will always be political, and there's no way to keep politics out of it. That one holds true more than ever. Someone asks, what are your upcoming spinning plans? I've been thinking about this a lot because I've been itching to dive into another spinning project, and I think it's going to be the Andrea Mowry Jaunty Spin Along Knit Along. I'm so sorry, I'm basic, but once I finish my first Jaunty, I will be casting on another one. They're just really fun to knit, and I really would love a hand spun one. So I'm still figuring out what fiber I want to cast on, if I want to do, not cast on, to spin, if I want to do like a combo spin or maybe do a smaller one and just stick to like a single 4-ounce braid. I haven't decided yet. I did get some fiber in Seattle that I am really excited about, so I'm thinking about maybe going with one of those. How has your YouTube journey been? It's honestly been great. I love YouTube. It's my favorite social media platform by far. I've been on YouTube longer than I have not, which is an insane shower thought that I had the other day. Not that I've been making YouTube videos that long, but I've been watching YouTube videos for over half of my life. I started this channel as a knitting channel in 2016, so I've been here for quite a while. I also made videos before that. I don't know if I should admit that on the internet, but I did. So I feel like I have been making videos for a long time. There have been some long breaks in there. In 2020, I left social media for 3 years. I didn't know if I was gonna come back, but it drew me back in. I mean, I love YouTube. I love the community here. I love making videos. I love watching videos. And this year was the first year that I really committed to sticking with it and making videos. I've been way more creative than I ever have in my life on here. And it's just been so much fun. Like, I love doing this, and it's been awesome to get a little bit of traction. I had my own little viral moment this year, and I would say even with that, like, the engagement on YouTube is overwhelmingly positive. I feel like this year was really a practice year for me, and not to say that next year I won't still be practicing, but I really experimented with doing a lot of different types of videos and have kind of figured out what I like and what works for me, and it just makes me really excited to keep doing this. I would love to continue making videos for a long time, and they do take a lot of time and effort, of course, but I find that it's worth it and just a lot of fun. Kendra asked, would you ever do anything fiber related as a career, or would that ruin it for you? I like that you phrased the question as fiber related, because my answer to that question is 100% I would pursue something like that as a career, but I don't know if I would pursue knitting as a career. There was a period in my life where I was thinking about kind of becoming a designer. And I put out some patterns and I was having fun with that. And then I don't know, there was about 4 years there where I had no interest in becoming a designer. Now with the release of the reverse Flegel heel, I am kind of thinking about dipping my toes into it again. Not as like a career, but just as something that I think could be fun on the side. Because the thing is, I love knitting other people's patterns. And if I did become a knitwear designer, I think I would only have time to test knit for myself. And I just don't think that would be very fun for me. Weirdly, I'm not one of those people who turns my hobby into a job and then gets sick of it. Like, in a way, I have kind of turned my biggest hobby into a little bit of a job by being on YouTube and having this channel. Not that I'm like making money off of it really. I don't think I've made more money than I've put into it. So I think I'm paying to do this. But if it is something that I could do full time and it could support me, I would be like more than happy to do that. Maybe I would feel differently if my only income was tied to something like my channel, but I really enjoy kind of making knitting a bit of a job for myself. I like being on a schedule. I like kind of forcing myself to hit certain milestones. And not to say that I'm like always holding myself to that, because I do have a full-time job. But yeah, I really don't dislike having something I want to be doing as work, which is why I've always thought that I would kind of naturally be a pretty good person to own a small business. That's been a goal of mine for basically my whole life. I've always wanted to own a small business. I haven't really known what type of business that would actually be viable for me, because of course I would need to make money from it. But yeah, that's been a lifelong goal, and it probably always will be until I actually achieve it one day. But I definitely see that as being something fiber related. I've spent so much of my life learning about this and just like dedicating myself to it. And so if I were to open a small business, it would just make sense for it to be fiber related. I've spent a lot of this year learning about fleece and scouring my own fleece and carding it, and yeah, just learning a lot about how that all works. And so that's definitely in the back of my head as a small business idea, but I don't know. Obviously, I don't know what the future holds. Right now, I work full time, and that is an easier way to pay the bills than starting a business would be. But I've always kind of felt like I had it in me to just be a little bit of a workaholic and start a business. So you just never know. Someone asks, what is the variegated yarn in the photo? It's so pretty. Thank you. So that is my hand spun. I did a combo spin over the summer for Tour de Fleece for a sweater that I'm currently knitting. And I have a lot of videos on that, but I'll also link to my handspun project on Ravelry in case you want some more details about it. Okay, this one's a two-parter, so I'll answer the first question first. You often talk a lot about techniques. Is that because you do a lot of research, or have you knit such a great variety over the years that those techniques have come up naturally? I want to say it's a bit of both. I am a pretty technical person. Like I'm drawn to the way things technically work. And so I think that is what drives me to keep learning about techniques and knitting things that feature new to me techniques. I love reading. I love books about knitting. And those are often about techniques. So if I'm reading about a certain technique, I might want to try it. But yeah, I think you really nailed it on the head. Like, I've also just knit a lot of, a variety of patterns over the years, and there are so many techniques that I still haven't tried, but I think just in choosing, different types of patterns, there have been a number of techniques that I've come across, and I always want to understand. I always want to know more. And so if there's something that I previously didn't know that's in a pattern, I will kind of go down the rabbit hole of learning more about it. Knitting for me is like a puzzle. I want to know how all of these pieces can fit together to create a product. And that's why I've always thought I would be a better tech editor than a designer. There was a period in my life where I was thinking about being a tech editor for knitting patterns, and ultimately there just wasn't enough time to devote to that. But yeah, I'm definitely more technical than I am like creative. I am not nearly as good at the aesthetics, which is, I think, ultimately a limiting factor for me on social media. I've taken a really big step back from Instagram. I haven't really been on Instagram for a long time because I just find it difficult to like portray my knitting and my knitting life in like a beautiful way. I find it so much easier to talk about all of the technical aspects of what I'm making. And I think I just find that more interesting as well. And so maybe that's another reason why, is that it is just what comes more naturally to me. That being said, that is why I have really liked YouTube this year, because I feel like it lets me be creative and challenge myself in creative ways, in a way that's just a little bit easier for me. Okay, the second question is, have you ever thought of taking a yarn-centric trip? I have thought about it briefly. I really wanted to go to Flock Fiber Fest back in August, and that didn't work out, but I'm really hoping to go next year. Usually when I go on a trip, I will scout out all of the yarn stores that I'm gonna be near and go to them, or try to. But that's about the extent of which I have done anything like yarn related on a trip. So I think if I had some knitting friends to go with, I could definitely see myself planning a trip that's like purely focused on yarn and knitting and sheep. I know my boyfriend would also be super down to do that as well, but we just take so few trips every year that it's hard to like prioritize that. So yeah, the answer is I have briefly thought about it. I haven't put a ton of thought into it, but I would love to do that someday. Okay, the last question is one that I got on Instagram, and it is, any tips for crocheting socks? I have never crocheted socks, and I probably won't. So I don't really have any tips to offer. But I have read from some other people who have knit them or crocheted them before, and I think the biggest thing is making sure that you stick with a fingering weight or even go down to a lace weight. The thing with crochet socks is they just can get very thick. So sticking with a thinner weight yarn is probably going to be best. I would also recommend just making sure that the pattern you use is one that will lead you to success. So making sure that a lot of other people have crocheted it and been successful. I think a big thing with crochet socks is just reducing the bulk in the heel area or other, like the toe, like other areas where some shaping increases and decreases could cause some more bulk. So that's my understanding of crochet socks. Like I said, it's a very small understanding because I've never done it before. So if anyone else has some tips on crocheting socks, please give us your knowledge in the comments. Well, thanks for sticking to the very end, and thank you for asking all of your questions. The sun has fully left the building, so I think that means that I need to as well. But before I go, now that I've answered all of your questions, you have to answer a question from me. The second to last Knitmas question is, what is a goal or resolution that you have for 2026? I shared a little bit about mine, which is to start a small business. I don't know for sure that that's going to be something that happens in 2026, but I would like to continue working on that. It's been something I've worked on all throughout 2025, and so I want to keep working on that. I'm manifesting it. Of course, I'll share more as I'm able to, but for now, I'm really just doing a lot of the groundwork on it. All right, I will see you for one last Knitmas video. Bye.